Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub. Today I'm joined by Bakar. Big man Bakar is here and he's going to drop all the FPL knowledge we need. You're going to talk to us, Bakar, about 5 different topics, maybe 4 or 5 different topics. Then we're going to have a look at your team going into Game Week 9, what you're doing. And obviously a lot of people on Wildcards. We did a video on Wildcards last week. People can still go and check out. And I did another one with Abdul FPL Salah yesterday. How's the international break been to you?
Yeah, it was a much needed break, John. I'm much refreshed now. Looking forward to the weeks to come. There's lots of fixtures, Premier League, Champions League, especially in October. It's going to be crazy, and I think this is a pivotal time. Um, and now, what I like about this point in time is that you see a lot of divergence in teams. There are plenty of people who wildcarded last week, like us. There are a lot of people who are on wildcard this week. There are others who are wildcarding in 13, and I see the template is sort of breaking apart. And I think this is a very crucial time for us FPL managers.
Yeah, I was saying that yesterday on stream with Abdul about how much I love the fact there's a bit of difference in the teams now. And just one other quick thing is that, we talked going into this season about how a lot of people were saying instead of it being one long marathon or 2 sort of half marathons, it would be 4 sprints with, the breakup of the wild card that's been popped mostly this week and last week. Then we're going to have the ultimate unlimited transfers for the World Cup. Then another wild card sort of towards the latter end of the season, 4 sprints. The first sprint you could say is done now. Are you happy with your performance over the first 8-9 game weeks? I think you have to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's been relatively solid. I mean, at this point in time, I have like 450 points. It's all right. It's nothing spectacular. It's not bad as well, and that's how I generally play. In the first half of the season, I tend to play safe, and more opportunities will arise, in especially when the double game weeks come. So that's when I tend to sort of pick and choose my moments and attack later on. And at this point in time, I think it's relatively uh, okay to have a safe team and stay with the rest of the pack, and then you can sort of attack later.
Yeah. Well, look, it's time. It's time to talk about some of the topics we have today, and the big burning topic is Isak. Isak's injured. A lot of people were debating him last week in a wild card. I went for him over Tony, which paid off in 1 week. He got the goal, the penalty, wasn't it? It seems so long
Yeah,
ago.
nine
But
pointer.
now he's out for an undetermined amount of time. I don't know if you've heard any updates, but Isaac's out.
Yeah, it's
Isak needs
yeah.
replaced.
All we know is that he's out for weeks now. That probably sort of tells me that he's out for like at least 2 to 3 weeks. That means that you have to transfer him out. There's little option. I mean, even if we delay transferring him out this week, we will have to probably transfer him out next week. It doesn't really seem like a short-term injury, which is terrible news because uh, you know in on our game week 8 wildcards, we'd sort of penciled in some other transfers to make as well, which makes it very difficult to navigate. But it is what it is, and we have to manage through this crisis now.
So, who would you replace Isak with? I've seen a certain name mentioned a lot this week, and I don't know if he's going to be your answer. I'm sure you know who I mean. The guy who hasn't been mentioned all
Your
season.
smile is giving it away. Your smile is giving it away. You're blushing while you're thinking about it.
Are you? Are
Um,
you on that bandwagon too? The flaring of the nostrils tells me
unfortunate,
you are. You are.
unfortunately, and reluctantly, probably.
Uh,
It's not as if I have a choice. I'll be very honest with you. I mean, the best
we
replacement is
always
Tony.
have a choice, Bakar. We always have a
The,
choice.
no, no, hear me out. I mean, the best replacement is Tony. His numbers are decent. Brentford are second only to Man City for big chances this season. Um, and Tony will continue to tick along. I mean, he's pushing for a place in the World Cup squad. He has all the motivation to perform. And he's the safe play because he'll be the one I assume most Isaac owners will jump to. Uh, but the slight problem is that he's more pricier than Isaac. He's 7.3, and he probably prices you out of some players you'd want to own in the times to come. So, for example, I think there's Zaha, there's Madison, even Salah. A lot of us have booked in a transfer from De Bruyne to Salah in the weeks to come. These are the kind of players you would definitely want to own from game week 9 onwards. Uh, I don't think Tony is as much of a priority as these players. However, if you can find a route of owning all of these players, then sure, I think Tony is the way to go. But given how my team structure is, I'm not really sure because it sort of reduces my flexibility to move elsewhere.
Mm.
And that's the critical decision that you'd have to make. I mean, not just these specific players that I talk about. Even when you look at from game week 13 onwards, like a lot of players like Saka, Foden, they have a terrific run of fixtures. So I mean, if you go for someone like a Tony right now, does that restrict your flexibility to buy them at that point in the future? It probably does. So I mean, it's basically a cost benefit analysis where I have to weigh up which options do you like more.
So, which option do you like more? Just say the name.
I mean, I've looked at a lot of other options. I mean, I've been very reluctant to go there because I've looked at Dhaka, but apparently Vardy is in line to start against Forest. I was even looking at Shea Adams this morning, Bumo. I mean, that's what it's come down to. But I mean, the name I and you have in mind, which we're referring to, is Dom Solanke. I mean, Bournemouth are terrible. I mean, it's a given that, I mean, they've been very poor this season. They don't have any creativity. They're 20th for XG this season. They're yet to record an XG of over 1 in any game this season. I mean, they're averaging less than 10 shots a game. I can go on and on about how terrible their stats are, but it's just that with the upcoming run of fixtures that Bournemouth have, you look at their fixtures, they have Brentford at home this week, Leicester at home next week, then Bournemouth, and then Southampton at home. And Southampton at home is crucial in game week 12, which is a good fixture, and you'd need a decent player in game week 12. Now, all these four upcoming opponents are in the bottom half for big chances conceded this season, which sort of gives me slight confidence. And at 5.5 million, I don't think there's much you can expect because ideally he's an enabler who allows you to afford the rest of the team. So I mean, as long as he gets like 2 returns, let's say over 4 games, that's good enough. I mean, he's a 90 minutes guy who's going to be on penalties. He's the focal hub of the team. So I mean, if Bournemouth are to score, there's a very high possibility that he's involved.
I hear you, but but I don't know. It's just there's something in me, Bakar, right? That I'm all about it, right? I am all about the whole FPL community digging into the stats and the logic of the penalties and whatever else. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're banking it. You're sticking a starter in your team. He's going to be starting. Who playing for Bournemouth? And like
He's
I
going
get
to
the
be starting for
fixtures, but you've said it all yourself. It goes back to like game week 8 with the West Ham stuff and everyone going for their Bowens and their Emersons and whoever else. Everyone was like, oh, but it's West Ham and yeah, they've been crap this season. You know, I don't know.
You're
It
right.
does. I
You're
get
right.
you. I get you. It just doesn't
I
sit
mean,
right.
it does not. I mean, I am not debating it. I mean, you can see how reluctant I am to go there myself. I mean, this is probably the least confident I've ever been on a team field video, and it's almost as if I'm slating a player who I probably might buy. I mean, I
Probably
would.
might.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still not sure because um, because you're right. I mean, effectively, if you're buying him for the next 4 fixtures, you have to play him because it doesn't make any sense to bench him. But it's just that if he affords you to have like a better squad. So, for example, in my team, I'll tell you what it's about. So, for example, in my team, if I get Tony this week, then I can't get Zaha next week for Bailey in one move. So effectively for that, I'll have to take a hit. Now, is it worth doing it? That's the conundrum. So technically, it's like Solanke plus Zaha versus um, Tony plus Bailey, and I think I rather prefer Solanke plus Zaha. So you have to look at these combinations. It's not just about comparing. It's not an apples for apples comparison where you compare Solanke and Tony together. Obviously, Tony is a much superior pick, and he's likely to do well, and he's more of a long-term pick. But that's that's how that's how I feel about it, and it's a very tricky position to be in. I mean, I get the fact that you're saying that Bournemouth are terrible, and it doesn't really sit right. But at at a very similar point last season, John. Pookie had dropped in price to 5.8 million as well, and he had a decent amount of fixtures coming up as well. And I mean, he scored 3 goals in those 5 games. I was just checking yesterday, so it's not as if that these budget
Confirmation
strikers
bias.
yeah, I mean, rubbish strikers from I mean, budget strikers from rubbish teams can do well.
Yeah.
It's just that it feels very uneasy going there. You're right,
But
but
I hear you. Look, I think it's one of those where it's not the move to Solanke that is should be focused on. It's the move from Bailey to Zaha. It's the other move that allows in your team. Exactly as you say, he's what you call them, an enabler. It's what he enables. It's what he will enable in your team. Like, I'm looking at this from a different perspective now because I have a ton of cash in the bank. I don't even know what I have. I'll pull my team up on the screen now. I have 2.6 mil in the bank.
2.5 here. Yeah.
Yeah, 2.6 here, and I've got like Isak to get rid of. So I could very easily go Isak to Tony, and I'll still have over 2 million in the bank. I've got Kulusevski there, who could go down to Madison. More money in the bank. And then that still leaves me over time the money to go De Bruyne, Salah, and then I don't even know the numbers. Fafana,
Zaha. What about Zaha?
Zaha, Bailey is probably the move. Oh my God, my team's a mess. I've just realised. Jesus wept. I need to take hits. Anyway, I have a load of money.
Kulusevski's injured. Yeah, Kulusevski's injured. So
he's injured.
Yeah. There's a doubt regarding his availability this weekend.
And this is why booking in transfers is such an idiot's game, because I brought Kulusevski in on the wild card for the 1 week punt. He got the assist. I was happy, but I was like, he's out for Zaha next week or Madison. And now that time has come, Isak's injured. So now I'm in a position where I've got Kulusevski and Isak need to go. So a -4 is on the cards.
If Kulusevski is not fit, then you can just simply sell him for Zaha, and you can forget about Isak for 1 week. I think just keep him and sell him next week.
But I love a -4, Bakar. I love the -4. Get Tony.
You're slating me for buying Solanke, but at the same time, you're probably doing something similar to.
Do you know what it is, Bakar? You get your Solanke. He can play against Brentford, and my Tony is going to rip you a new one. My Tony's going to go in there and get a hat-trick against you. And you're going to... I know it won't affect Solanke, but I'm telling you now, Solanke's going to be sat there pinned back in his own half defending.
By the way, sorry to cut you off, John. If you're buying one this week, I prefer Madison. You don't have Madison, right?
No.
Yeah, I definitely pick Madison over Zaha then.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big debate, actually. And that actually was a question I was going to ask you.
Yeah, see, that's it. I mean, given how your team is, I would plan a move. I would basically do Kulusevski to Madison this week, even if Kulusevski is fit, which I doubt he will be. But even if he's fit, I'd still do the move. And you can take the hit if you want. But again, if you buy Tony, you'll be short from Bailey to Zaha next week, right? And that's the move you want to make. So, I mean, you're in a very similar position to what I am in. Except for the fact that I already own Madison over Kulusevski.
I'm going to plug a few of these in and see how short I'll come. So if I was to go Madison, Zaha... Oh, Bakar.
Yeah.
For a -8, I can get Madison, Zaha, and Tony for Isak, Kulusevski, and Bailey. I have the money on the button. I know you probably roll one and do the other one next week. Like, you probably don't take the 8 hit point hit. You probably take a 4. But like, I have the cash, but it leaves me stranded with De Bruyne and no Salah. God, I hate this game.
That's still not a huge problem, because if you're not getting Salah this week, you're forgetting about him till game week 12, I would have thought. So that's still all right. I don't think that's a huge problem.
I don't know. Looking at Madison there, Zaha, Tony, the boys, 3 guys. I don't think I've had any of them all season. I could be lying to you. I feel like I haven't had them all season. Oh. Anyway, that my team is not what we're here for. We're here for your team, Bakar. But we have a couple more talking points before we get into what your planned moves are. So
I'd just like to run you through a couple of the other replacements people are looking at as well. I mean, there's Daka, but as I said, Vardy's likely to start. There's Watkins, but Villa are 19th for XG. So if you're looking at Watkins, then you might as well get Solanke for 1.5 cheaper, because I mean, there's not much between Villa and Bournemouth at this point in time in terms of creativity. And there's Callum Wilson, But again, I mean, can he be trusted with injuries? Is always going to be a question mark. So I just think the options are very slim, and you almost have to either go to Tony or Solanke.
Okay, so that's the forwards wrapped up. In terms of when to wildcard, because there anything to add in, I think a lot of people probably have their mind made up. If they didn't do it in 8, they're probably doing it in 9. Is there any other considerations as to, is there any reason people wouldn't pop it this week?
Yes, I mean, I think it's not that straightforward. I mean, it's basically a choice between game week 9 and 13. Now, the benefit I see of game week 13 is that you can dead end your team into game week 12, which is the blank from Man City and Arsenal, and then you can buy players from City, Spurs, Arsenal, because those teams, John, City, Spurs, Arsenal, they have a terrific run from game week 13 onwards. I mean, their fixtures are absolutely incredible. So while most wildcarders in game week 9 are buying players from, let's say, inferior sides like Leicester and Palace, those on game week 13 wildcard will be buying much more powerful players, much more explosive players from the better teams. So there's definitely a very good argument to wildcarding in 13. They can sort of dead end their team into 12, and then they can just pull the trigger in 13 and buy back their City players and their Arsenal players. The other windows, obviously, this week, and the benefit of wildcarding this week is that you can load up on Trent and Salah. Trent and Salah are two players who most of the game week 8 wildcarders won't have. So that's a big advantage there right away. I mean, imagine owning Trent and Salah's differentials. That's
Yeah.
that's a big upside to have. And I mean, obviously, if you wildcard this week, you can plan for game week 12 accordingly, and you can easily navigate game week 12. And you give, as opposed to game week 13, you give yourself more time to benefit. I mean, if you're wildcarding right now, you give yourself 8 weeks to benefit. If you wildcard in game week 13, you give yourself like 4 game weeks to benefit. So obviously there's that as well. And the final thing is that if you wildcard this week, you're sort of buying players who are nailed. But if you wildcard in 13, rotation will be a big factor because there's very short turnaround between the games at that point. So even though you are buying players from the better teams, I mean, those teams are likely to face a lot of fixture congestion. So nailing the ideal wildcard team is really difficult at that point in time.
Bakar, before we move on to the next topic, I just want. I know no one in the crowd wants to see Bakar sad. I know you don't want to see it. If there's someone you don't want to see sad, it's Bakar. But Bakar, little over 10% of people that are here have liked this video. How does that make you feel inside?
It makes me feel very somber. It makes me feel worse than buying Solanke. So, so kindly make me a happy man. I mean, I'm already sad enough as it is, and then smash that like button.
This week of all weeks, back from international break, Solanke being talked about. Give the man a like. Give us both a like and subscribe to the channel while you're here. We're here every single week. So, yes, the wild card. Now, the last thing I'll say on that, Bakar, and we'll get moving on, is, the merits of holding to 13, the popping at 9. You've talked about all that. What advice could you give to someone who's him in hand actually can't just make that decision right now? Because obviously you can't talk to everyone individually, and there's a lot. But if there's one sort of thing that should make that decision for people, is there anything that would swing it for you, or anything you'd say to those people? It's a hard question because it's very generic slash.
I'd look at the team that you have. I mean, for example, if there's someone um, who's loaded up on Arsenal and City, then I mean, in that case, I think it's sort of better to wildcard right now because it becomes easier for you to navigate Game Week 12. Because if you have, like, for example, 5 or 6 players from City and Arsenal at this point in time, you'll have to sort of make transfers to manage a Game Week 12 team, to manage a decent quota of 11 players. So I think if you have, like, a lot of players from those teams, then you can afford to wildcard.
Cool. And the last topic I'm going to throw before we give you a team reveal and quick fire questions is KDB to Salah? Question mark.
I had planned that move for myself this week. It's a very aggressive move to make. I don't think too many people will have the luxury of making it because a lot of other fires have popped up. But if you have given yourself the luxury to make the move, I'm not opposed to it. I like that move. But I will only make it if you captain Salah. If you think that Salah is the best captain, then you should go for it. If you don't think that Salah is the best captain, then don't go for it. Salah, I think, is a very good differential captain to own this week. If you're looking to make up points, then it makes good sense. But again, I don't think too many people will have the luxury to do it. I'm still considering it for my team. I haven't completely ruled it out. It's like a very, very aggressive move, but it's it's still something which is on my mind, despite the fact what the other fires that I have in my team. I don't really hate that move, to be very honest with you. But the safe play is obviously to hold De Bruyne because his ownership is going to be higher than Salah, his effective ownership, and Haaland will be the most captained again comfortably. So obviously the safe play is to hold Haaland and De Bruyne and to just forget about Salah till game week 12.
Well, Bakar, time to look at your team. So I've imported your team into the My Team tool over on Fantasy Football Hub. And what we're going to do is discuss what you're thinking of doing. We're going to plug it in and see how that affects your team rating. So at the minute, you've got Madison. I suppose he would be starting instead of who? Andreas or Bailey?
I have both starting Madison and Bailey actually. I have at this point in time I have Perisic, Andreas, and Williams on the bench.
Oh, Perisic. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Perisic is first sub, yeah.
So yeah, so this leaves us with, if I have a look at this, and who's your captain this week? Who are you thinking of captaining? Haaland.
Obviously, if I don't buy Salah, then Haaland, obviously.
Okay, so if we don't buy Salah, it's Haaland. So as it stands with the team that you currently have, no transfers made, 88% game week rating, 91% team rating, and predicted points of 59.3. That's just up at the top of the screen here for people watching at home. What moves are you thinking? You've one free transfer.
Yes. To be very honest with you, I haven't really made up my mind yet. I'll move after the press conferences tomorrow. There are three moves that I'm considering. The first is obviously the obvious Isak to Solanke moves because it helps me to buy Zaha for Bailey next week. That's the safe play, and that is the move at this point in time I think I'm most likely to make, but you never know. I mean, it gives me a lot of flexibility in the weeks to come. Um, there's still a lot of time to the deadline though, so who knows what might change. The second move that I can potentially make is to go super ultra aggressive and go De Bruyne to Salah captain. Um, Again, that's the aggressive move to make. The third thing that I can do is to save. Now that would give me a lot of flexibility. Is reckoning. Then at 5.5, I would much rather have him than Solanke. Similarly, if Daka plays well this week, you never know. So I mean, one extra week of information could help me. So that's the rationale behind saving. I mean, these are the three sort of strategies I've looked at for my team, and honestly, uh, I'm not really sure which way I'd go.
I'm just having a quick look there, checking everything's running smoothly because I think the stream just restarted. But we're back. I think everyone watching, if they're not seeing this, I just have to refresh. But for some reason it disconnected and reconnected, but we're live. So, yes, I like that all. If people want to see what you end up doing in the end, I suppose find you on Twitter. Your handle's just below your head. You'll be sticking out your team reveal article. It will be on Fantasy Football Hub. And yeah, Bakar, you ready for some quick fire questions?
Sure, absolutely. What would you recommend, by the way? I am very curious to pick your brains. Why don't you come up with a suggestion? I mean, you like putting me on the spot, so
do you know what, Bakar,
why can't I do the same?
I'm just the handsome face. That's a joke. That brings on all you experts, right? And every week I just ask you all the questions, and you're right. I think I've been kind of just tiptoeing through the season in a different way than I've played other seasons because I'm talking to people like you and Abdul and Wes, and it's making me play this very proper way of playing the game, this very methodical,
boring,
correct way of playing the game, and you're doing the
by
thing
the book.
Everyone's playing it because it's the right move and it's the right decision to do this and that. And
boring
that.
Way of playing.
I can't bring myself to bring Solanke in, and I know that part of me's but everyone's doing it. And it makes sense, and I understand the argument, and it saves me the cash, and then I could do this, and don't take a -4 and don't take a -8. Part of me is just do you know what it is? I can go Tony, I can get Madison, I can get Zaha, hit the button, roll the dice, see what happens, hero or zero. But then, in terms, and that's kind of when I look at what you're doing, and I'm kind of like, balls to the wall, Bakar. You have a bit of cash in the bank here. Solanke, what are you doing with yourself? You call yourself an FPL expert. You call yourself an FPL content creator. Come on, we can do better than this. But at the same
I'm embarrassed.
time, there's a reason
absolutely
you've got
embarrassed.
such. There's a reason you've got the finishes you do, because these are the things
I
you
can
need to do.
I can make more arguments for not buying Solanke than for buying Solanke, to be very honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, but I do think the interesting thing you said was the idea of rolling, because everyone feels they need to do something, particularly when you have a player like Isak. You know, the value could go down. Everyone feels they need to do something, so the idea of rolling and just staying patient, it's the most left field thing I think you've said, not even Solanke. So I don't know, what would I recommend you do? I would move Isak to the striker that you want. That's what I would do, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of Isak, and I'm going to bring in either Tony or Tony, probably. And
yeah, but it's not as clear cut as just buy the strikers you want, because there's a midfielder that I want as well. There's a midfielder that I want next week as well.
Yeah, I know, I hear you. But look, I suppose if people want to find you on the handle below your head, they'll find me on the handle below my head. Will we do some quickfire questions and wrap up, Bakar?
Of course.
Cool. So guys, how quickfire questions works is give us yes or no style questions, A or B style questions. If they maybe A, B, or C can be accepted, and spam them in the comments. Don't spam the same one over and over, but get your question in or different questions in, and Bakar's going to answer as many as he possibly can in 5 minutes. At the end of 5 minutes, we'll wrap up the stream. Like the video while you're here and subscribe. We're here every week, and there's another podcast, The Green Arrow, going out later this evening. Tomorrow I'm talking to Wes on the Double Up podcast, and then at the end of the day, later in the day, probably about 4 or 5 o'clock, we have Will Thomas, who is the Fantasy Football Hub daddy. His Wildcard will be coming out on the channel. So lots of videos to come before the deadline, but get your questions in. Bakar, any comments before I start pelting you?
No, I'm all ready.
What was your record? 53 or something, wasn't
it? 51, wasn't it?
I've got it here somewhere. Part of me wants 49. Part of me wants to find this. But maybe this one's it. 53. It was 53.
Okay, sure.
So 53 to beat. The hard part's me asking the questions, to be honest with you. Your answers are always the easy part.
Always.
Right, I'm hitting go. Okay, so Guaita or Raya?
Guaita.
Kane, Madison, or Haaland captain?
Haaland.
Guaita, Fabianski, or Sa?
Guaita.
Solanke or Daka?
Solanke.
West Ham players, yes or no?
No.
Fofana or Bailey?
I don't think Fofana will start, so probably Bailey.
Kane, Martinelli or Saka?
Martinelli.
Wilson, question mark?
Too risky with the injury record.
Havertz, question mark?
Pass.
Bowen or Foden?
Foden.
Saka or Madison?
Madison.
Salah or KDB this week?
Salah.
Barnes or Solanke?
Solanke.
Tony or Wilson? I'm just laughing at Solanke.
Tony or Wilson.
Okay, Gehi or Zuma?
Gehi.
Diaz to Madison?
I'd keep Diaz if I had him this week.
Paqueta to Zaha this week, or roll it and do it next week?
I'd do it.
Is Vardy an option on a wild card?
Too risky.
Martinelli or Sinistera?
Martinelli.
Son or Salah?
Salah.
Oh shit. Kufal or Trippier?
Trippier.
Bella Kotchap or Kufal?
Bella Kotchap.
Trent and Solanke or Trippier and Tony?
Trent and Solanke.
Would you like to live in the beach or live in the city?
City.
Okay. Okay, so they're all the same. KDB or Salah? I've asked this, but KDB or Salah? Hit us again.
Salah.
Anderson or Bowen?
Owen.
Martinelli or Rodrigo?
Martinelli.
Sterling and KDB. Basically, Sterling or Son?
Son.
Madison captain.
A bit too risky.
Simicus 1 week punt on a wild card.
I won't book transfers in advance.
Eze or Gross?
Robertson is likely to be fine as well. I think Robertson could be fine as well in a week's time.
Eze or Gross?
Eze.
Martinelli or Trent?
Martinelli.
Son or Sterling? I've already asked that, but go again.
Son, yeah.
Whenever I ask the same question, you get to answer it again, so you get the extra points. Trippier and Pope or Walker Peters and Pope?
Trippier and Pope.
Perisic and Dallo or Nico and Fofana?
Perisic and Dallo.
Sinistera or Foden?
Foden.
Who wins the World Cup?
France, probably.
Really? We'll have to do a stream about that. Fabianski or Pope?
Pope.
Jesus or Tony?
Tony from now on in.
Is the host a Mickey Mouse manager? I think
No.
he is. Let me see. 2 forwards or 3 forwards?
2 probably.
Foden or Saha?
Zaha.
Hold on Diaz? Like, would you keep
Four,
Diaz?
Yeah. I would.
Spurs or Arsenal win?
Arsenal.
Dewsbury Hall or Andreas? On the field this week.
Dewsbury Hall, I think.
Bernardo or Gundogan?
Whichever one you think will start.
Zaha, Madison or Diaz?
Madison.
Which keeper would you pick for the wild card?
Gaita.
Bakar or John?
John.
You have to say that to seem modest. I know you'd pick Bakar. Bailey or Andreas?
Bailey. Bailey,
Okay.
I think, will start. Andres could play in a deeper position because Palini is suspended.
Guida or Ward?
Gaita.
All right, there we go. Time
I
up,
don't think
Bakar.
Ward will start. Okay.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 48. 48?
Yeah, not bad.
48's not bad. And we'll wrap up on
Yeah.
that, Bakar. So people, you can find us on Twitter at the 2 handles below our heads. Like the video on your way out and subscribe. We'll be back next week. Bakar, anything to say before we go?
Yep, nothing special. Good luck for the week, and I hope it goes well.
Yeah, I hope you do well too. I hope you enjoy. I hope Solanke has a howler because I won't have him, and I hope I can laugh at you next week.
Yeah. Just imagine if I buy him and if he scores this week, I won't spare you next week, John. You're in for a torrid time next week.
If he scores this week, you
and
can
if I have him,
you can rip me a new one. But if he doesn't score, I get to rip you a new one. All right, like you have to take it.
Yeah, if you buy Tony and he outscores Solanke, then sure.
Okay. All right, guys. See you later. Soldier Boy kissing us through the screen. Keevigan.